Cover 2 podcast coming at you live from the OC Rock Radio Studios at Saddleback College. I am Nick Neenan.
I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have a great show as always for you guys. The NBA playoffs, the conference finals are off to a hot start, so we'll definitely get into that. Sports betting is now legal in the United States of America. Okay?
Money's about to be flowing.
So we're going to discuss that, and also Robinson Cano suspended 80 games. The draft lottery for the NBA, which is always important, is also on tap for the show today. But we want to start with the fact that the Cavaliers and Celtics series has Boston up 2-0. Who thought the Celtics would be essentially dominating the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Is it a series, really? I mean...
Ooh, that's a shot at the Celtics. Or
yeah,
that's a shot at the Cavs.
It is. It is. I mean, the way that the Cavaliers are playing, they just, I don't know, they don't seem to want it. They're not playing as a team. And you see the Celtics, who are down their two best players, Gordon Hayward, who unfortunately got injured the first game of the season, and Kyrie Irving, and yet they are playing like a collective unit. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to multiple people, starting with Brad Stevens, the head coach. But the way that these guys are just basically coming in and playing unselfish ball, they're playing team defense, and they're making the Cavaliers look like a team who shouldn't be in this Eastern Conference Finals right now.
No, totally. I know. It's disappointing on one end because the Cavaliers aren't putting up much of a fight, especially in that first game. Man, was that a blowout. But, the Celtics are a young and upcoming team, and they're playing hard, like you said, and the Cavs are essentially waiting for LeBron to win them the game. I mean, if LeBron were to somehow win the NBA Finals this year, and it was to win the title, this would have to be probably the best performance I've seen from a guy in sports ever.
An individual.
Exactly, yeah. So he's the whole team. The only way they're going to win games is if these other guys step up even a little bit. Right? I mean, it just seems like LeBron is doing literally everything. Now, I'm going to say this before we say anything else. It's 2-0 Boston. They're going into the queue. They're going into Cleveland for these next two games. I honestly think that if Boston takes any of the next two games, this series is over. I don't think the Cavaliers can win 3 straight games without the rest of that team really stepping up. LeBron cannot win the next 3 games. Because if you have to win 3 games in a row, instead of, let's say 2, you're down 3-2. 3 games in a row is different because one of those games, the Celtics could just get really hot and win the game, and then the series is over, and the Celtics go into the NBA Finals, and the Cavs are going fishing. So, I don't know. These are 2 of the biggest games, potentially, in Cleveland Cavaliers history. Because if they want to keep LeBron, they need to not lose one of these next 2 games. Or it's gonna be tough sledding because they did not get the number 1 pick in the draft either in the draft lottery.
No, they didn't.
It's not like they're gonna get some superstar stud next year coming in to help LeBron out unless they sign a guy. But I don't think they have the money to do that. So they need to win these next 2 games, and they've looked super disappointing so far.
You're right. Well, guess what? They've got 3 days off today, which Wednesday, the 16th. Thursday and Friday off, so they don't play until Saturday. So that's 3 days that they get to basically
clear your mind
and make some major adjustments that need to be made. And speaking of adjustments, let's just go back to game 2.
Let's dive into it. Yeah.
The Cavaliers are, I would say, more or less, LeBron James is really, really big on making second half adjustments and coming out and showing different looks and all that. And in the first and second quarter, the Cavs actually outscored the Celtics. In the third quarter, the Cavs got outscored 36-22. Like, what kind of adjustments are those?
No.
I mean, to me, that's a little ridiculous when you're playing so well in the first half. And listen, I get the Celtics made their own adjustments, I'm sure. But for the Cavaliers, this doesn't seem like a team, that LeBron James is playing on. You don't, I get it. It's not a one-man sport, and you need other players to step up and play. But I don't get what's going on with this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Like, if there's something going on, with the players amongst themselves, I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. This is not what we've seen from a typical LeBron James team, and it's kind of mind-boggling. Here's a couple other stats. LeBron and Kevin Love were the only 2 Cavs starters to reach double figures, and then I believe there was only one other Cavs player that was at 11 points. No one else got into double figures in points.
Yeah.
That's not one of the ways that you're going to beat the Celtics. Now, great, LeBron put up 42 points, but if you're the Celtics, I'm saying go ahead, LeBron, put up 60 points. No one else is going to score on us. True. And LeBron isn't going to be able to beat the Celtics by himself. So the Celtics have a really good game plan going on right now. Guess what? All 5 Celtics starters were in double figures. So they spread the ball around. They get each other involved. It's not, one guy needs to score 40. I think the highest scoring player, I might have been Terry Rozier. He had 23 points. That's perfect. Yeah. Everyone else is in double figures. You're getting everyone else involved, and you're playing good team defense. That's the way to beat this Cavaliers team. So yeah, no, I have a whole lot of confidence in the Cavs right now. I'm not going to completely eliminate them because they do have LeBron and because he is that special. But the hole that they have dug themselves in right now, it does not look good. And the way that the Celtics team is playing, I agree. I think they're going to take one of these next 2 games in Cleveland and then close it out back home in Boston.
Yeah, no, it's going to be tough for Cleveland. And by no means am I saying Cleveland's out of this series. I am not saying right now that because it's 2-0 that the Boston Celtics are going to win this series. I still think the Cavaliers can do it. But they have to win these next 2 games at home. You have to defend home court, much like the Celtics did. You know, you have to make it seem like to the rest of us and the rest of the NBA world that, hey, you know what? The Celtics are just a really good home team, and we couldn't handle that crowd. We're not used to, LeBron's somewhat used to playing against Boston in the playoffs. He's done it before with the Heat and stuff like that. But, the rest of these players might not be used to playing in a Boston arena for the playoffs. It is different. You go to a Bruins game in the playoffs, it's different. You go to a Patriots game, it's different, okay? Red Sox, another good example. They're different crowds. It is an intimidating home field advantage. So you can say, hey, you know what? Boston took those 2 games. The second game was close. Let's take these next 2 games at home. I totally think they can do that because this team still has a lot of talented players. But when we're comparing the 2 teams, and you just brought this up, how a lot of the Celtics players are in double digits, I don't think there's a lot of players in the Cavaliers that can get into double digits. Like, you have LeBron, obviously, is going to be there. JR is a crapshoot, whether he's going to get it or not. Thompson's a crapshoot, whether he's going to get 10 points. Kyle Korver, he can probably get in double figures. But, where are Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr.? You know? We're where the hell are they? Who else even plays for the Cavs during these games?
Wow.
I'm saying, I don't know. That's why I have to ask. George Hill, another good example. Can he get 10 points in a game? If not, then they're screwed. Their bench is so much worse than the Boston Celtics bench. It's not even close. This Boston Celtics team is the clear better team, and the only way the Cavs are going to advance is because of LeBron. This team reminds me, the last couple of years, I've been changing sports a little bit. It reminds me of the Angels with Mike Trout. You have this superstar player that wills you into wins during the regular season, but you don't succeed you don't really succeed any further than that because you don't have guys around him. Now that the Angels have added tons of stars and a lot of other good players around Mike Trout, they're practically winning the AL West over the defending champion Houston Astros. So right now, the Cavaliers are the Angels of the last 2 or 3 years, where it's just that one star and everybody else is essentially they're not even all-star players. It's ridiculous, you know? So I just think the difference between these 2 teams is astounding to me. I don't know if I think you see the same thing, right?
I do. Right now, I feel like Tyronn Lue is in flux as far as, okay.
Tyronn Lue is the assistant coach to LeBron James, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
You gotta make sure you
I'm sorry, my mistake. My mistake. The assistant head coach of the Cavaliers, Tyronn Lue. I feel like he's in limbo. He doesn't really know what players to put out on the court. I mean, Jordan Clarkson in Game 1 plays 16 games. Game 2, he's on the bench, doesn't get in the game at all.
Well, you have Rodney Hood not wanting to come in the games.
Right. And that was more of the last series. I think they've settled whatever beef that was. But I don't think there's a lot of rhythm for these bench players at all. And I mean, listen, when the Cavaliers traded for Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood and Larry Nance Jr. and George Hill's a starter, so he does play a lot. But for those other 3 players that I just mentioned, it was really about bringing a spark and bringing energy off the bench. And when LeBron James goes and sits, having other players that can go and kind of create their own offense and do that type of thing. None of these players that I just mentioned have really done any of that so far in this series. So I don't know if that is a credit to the Celtics for the way that they're playing, or if we're just really seeing what this Cavaliers team is about. Because when this trade first happened, in midway through the season, right after the All-Star break, the Cavaliers went into Boston and whooped on the Celtics. I think they beat them by like 30 points or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a shellacking, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this Cavaliers team with all these 4 new players, these guys are going to be lights out. They're kind of unstoppable as long as everyone stays healthy." Blah blah blah. Well, guess what? As we've seen, they haven't really gelled, and like I said, I think this is kind of telling for this team. I think they are what they are. They're LeBron James led, and some nights you're right, you're going to get J.R. Smith who might hit 4 or 5 threes, and then you're going to get games like last night where J.R. Smith goes 0 for 7 and 0 for 4 from 3. So
serious now?
It's kind of a roller coaster ride. So if you're LeBron, you're going to have to put up triple-double numbers. You're going to have to guard the Celtics' best player, which is that Tatum, is that Rozier, is that Marcus Smart. I don't know who that is.
It doesn't matter. They're all good players.
You're right.
They have a good makeup.
And to that point, LeBron's only one man. So if I were him, I would have like some type of players-only meeting or something, and try to light a fire under the rest of those guys. Say, hey, listen, if we don't come out and play well, we're about to be down 0-3. And
if they lose the next game, it's 100% over.
No team in NBA history has ever come back from a 0-3 deficit, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, as a Lakers fan myself, I would not mind if the Celtics were the ones to blow that. Okay? That'd be pretty entertaining. And I would take another, let's say, Warriors-Cavs finals if the Celtics got that ruined in this series. But, if it goes 3-0, you talk about must-wins. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to keep stressing this. This might be the most must-win game in Cleveland Cavaliers history.
Oh, is that because LeBron James?
Because LeBron James is not coming back to the Cavs if they don't at least get to the finals.
Really?
Yeah.
You think it's done?
I think it's done. Laker fans, calm down. I'm not saying he's going to the Lakers, but nonetheless, I have to say I disagree with something you just said though. You said LeBron James is just one man. That's incorrect. LeBron James is a player, head coach, and GM for the Cavaliers. He's 3 guys.
Okay. All right.
So,
all right.
I want to admit something that I'm wrong about. Okay. So we remember you just mentioned that trade with Clarkson and Nance and all that for IT. At the time I said, the Lakers are getting screwed. They're not, they're giving up 2 good young players. Keep the team together. Do all that other stuff, and you get IT. Right, IT is nobody, and he really didn't help the Lakers that much. So I was right on that. But I have to say, overall with the trade, I was wrong. Clarkson and Nance Jr. don't seem like as good of players as I thought they were once you put them on a good team. I think you take the minutes away. So I'm going to admit that I was wrong. I think the Lakers actually ended up winning that trade because you saw the draft lottery. We'll talk about that a little later. But they didn't get a pick, obviously, because they had to give their pick to the 76ers because of just the horrible trading they did for Steve Nash way back in the day. But I do think now, with the fact that Clarkson and Nance Jr., so you just said Clarkson didn't play last game, I think it probably worked out. And that this draft pick and this clearing of cap space with Isaiah Thomas' contract is actually now in favor. So a lot of times you have to see if trades work out a little later. And at this point, it took all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals to realize that the Lakers actually, at least in my opinion, did end up winning that trade. I don't know if you agree.
I don't. Taking the draft picks out of it and just purely talking about basketball on the court, I'm not going to sit here and completely say that Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson aren't good players because of one potential bad performance in a playoff game. Now, it's a playoff game, so their performances are going to be heightened, and there's going to be a lot more scrutiny if they don't play well. But no, I still think both of these guys are really, really good role players. Not to say that they're starters, but I would still like for them to be on this Lakers team because, and this is obviously going into the future and we're speculating right now, but if the Lakers are able to get a star or 2, if the Lakers still had Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson, I think they would then be real contenders in the Western Conference. So, no, I would, yes, they really haven't done much to contribute in this series with the Celtics so far, but I would still want both of those guys on my team, regardless of what they've done or what they haven't done in this series so far.
You make good points, but I think right now it looks like the Lakers won. right now,
as of today, yes, because of their performance.
That's what I'm saying. So
Okay.
As of today, they are winning. But let's move on, and then let's move on to a better series.
Woo.
Okay, you couldn't stop talking about this series when you walked in. Okay, so we got
this is the finals right here, by the way.
Exactly, the NBA Finals. Yeah. We're watching the NBA Finals. Is there another game tonight, by the way?
There is, yeah.
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
Warriors,
so
Rockets,
tonight, Wednesday, after you listen to our podcast, go on and watch the game. So Warriors, Rockets, obviously highly anticipated series, right? We were saying we wanted this series the whole time. And the first game lived up to the bill somewhat. I know you're a little more excited about that game than I was. It kind of seemed like the Warriors were going to win that game the whole time. It was just a matter of if the Rockets could get a couple shots in a row, and they never did. But this series is going to be way more interesting than Celtics Cavaliers. I do think the Rockets can steal a game. I'm still sticking to my Warriors in 5 because they did win the first game. But I just think the Warriors are an all-time team. I just think they're too good. And this series is good, but I kind of want to get your take on it first. Maybe persuade me a little bit into getting more interested in the series. Because I just see Warriors 1, they're probably going to win in 5.
I actually, after game 1, I am more persuaded to go your route with Warriors in 5. The way that the Warriors played on Monday night. Listen, the Rockets are a great team. And they have 2 all-star, all-world players in James Harden and Chris Paul. And I'm not trying to throw any disrespect to any of these other Rockets players like Trevor Ariza.
They're not all-world players. You're not throwing disrespect.
They're not. And they do not compare, nor do they do enough as the Warriors role players do. Basically, Monday night, James Harden, he put up 41 points. He was a beast. He was unstoppable. I don't care if Kevin Durant was on him. I don't care if Draymond Green was on him. He was able to shoot threes over guys. I mean, he's an all-world scorer. That's what he does. Chris Paul had a very, very respectable game. 23 points, 11 rebounds. So he's pretty close to a triple-double. He did his thing. Guess what? Basically, no one else on the Rockets did a lick. I guess you could say Eric Gordon. He had 15 points.
What were Chris Paul's stats?
Oh, I just said Chris Paul, 23 points.
Oh, my bad. Okay,
11 rebounds. Sorry. Yeah, 11 rebounds, 3 assists.
Spaced out a little bit.
Right, no, it's okay. 3 assists. Eric Gordon came off the bench and provided 15 points, so he was somewhat of a spark. But really, the Warriors know it. It's really James Harden or bust. Like, all we have, and it's almost the same thing with the Celtics and what they're trying to do with LeBron James. It's the same thing. If I'm the Warriors, I'm going to say, all right, let James Harden go off. Let him go off and score 40 and 50 points. That's fine because basically, other than Chris Paul, no one else on the Rockets team can create their own shot. And the Warriors have such good team defense, and they have such good individual, like one-on-one defense as well, that it's really, really tough for this Rockets team. One thing that I was watching the TNT, the halftime show with Kenny the Jet Smith and Shaq and Charles Barkley and all those guys, and the one thing that they all agreed on, which I think was good analysis, is that the Warriors, when you watch them play on offense, they get such easy shots. Yeah. And that's partly due because they have so many all-star players on their team. So you can't really double-team one person because if you do, the Warriors are going to swing the ball and there's going to be another guy that can shoot a 3 so effectively. For the Rockets, it is so difficult for them to get into their offense. It's not like they can go and get a shot up in 7 to 8 seconds. They take the majority, if not all, of the shot clock. In the first half, they had 3 shot clock violations. So that right there, I think it says 2 things. 1, it says the Warriors' defense is really, really good. And 2, I think the Rockets are leaning a little too much on James Harden because their offense is so stagnant. They don't move. No one cuts. No one sets screens. It's really James Harden going one-on-one, and he's either going to drive, pull up for a jump shot, or, if he's able to use his vision and find another teammate, he'll do that. But it's like, he's one-on-one. There is no movement. There's no flow to the Rockets offense. And I think that's really the main reason why this Rockets team lost. So, the way that they played, I think I'm going to have to change my original pick. I forget if I said the Warriors in 6 or 7, but the way that this game went, I don't see how the Rockets can get more than one game unless James Harden literally becomes Superman and can score 50 points and guard Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, which ain't gonna happen.
That's a funny one. The James Harden's gonna guard Steph Curry.
Yeah, no, James Harden couldn't guard anyone.
No. Okay, so you said that James Harden was unstoppable in the game.
Yes.
41 points. Well, he also made the Warriors unstoppable by standing there and not playing defense. I mean, I told you last week, and I literally wasn't wrong. How I told you that if you're the Rockets, you might want to apply for a rule change with the NBA to say, when James Harden's on offense, he plays, and he makes his basket, and he goes to the sideline, and they run out. You have one of the the guys that does that cleans the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of them run out with a James Harden cardboard cutout and put him on the floor somewhere. Because that's the same damn thing as having him on the court.
That's horrible.
Okay?
That's horrible.
I don't care if it's horrible. It's true. Okay? And it's one of the reasons they're not going to win this series. Because they don't play defense. And the Warriors, now like you were mentioning, the Inside the NBA crew was talking about how not only it's hard to guard with, you can't double team them, but because they shoot from so far away, especially Durant and Curry, they you have to come out on defense pretty far to guard them. You can't just stay at the 3-point line. You have to go further than the 3-point line, which creates giant lanes for guys to run through. Because the defense is so spread out that there's now these big lanes for guys like Clay or Draymond or even Steph in some cases to run through these lanes. It's like impossible to guard the Warriors. Seriously,
it is. And listen, Kevin Durant went off for 37 points. Klay Thompson had 28. Steph only had 18. For Steph, that's probably like a mediocre game, right? But when your other teammates are playing so well, Steph doesn't need to score that many points, right? And he was actually getting locked down. Chris Paul is a really, really good individual defender when it comes to the point guard position, and he was doing a really, really good job of kind of keeping Steph Curry in check. Steph Curry really had to drive and get some layups and some harder shot attempts that you normally don't see him get. Typically, he kind of flows into his offense. He's able to get those kind of long-range three-pointers and then get himself into a rhythm. And I didn't really see that too much. Kevin Durant really took the focal point, the majority of the offense, and ran it through him. So, yeah, no, I think in the end, there's going to be way, way too much offense for the Rockets to stop. And I think they can get one game, more than likely at home. But in the end, I think it's just going to be too much firepower that the Warriors have. And, even though these it's going to be competitive, there was a lot of chirping going on between both sides. Chris Paul likes to talk a lot. Obviously, Draymond Green, he got a technical in the first quarter, like the first 5 minutes of the game. So it's going to be chippy, it's going to be physical, and it's going to be exciting to watch. But in the end, when you get into the third and fourth quarter, and especially as we get longer into the series, I think James Harden's going to start to wear down a little bit because, like I mentioned, it's so difficult for him to create offense against the Warriors' defense. And as we get into Game 5, potentially Game 6, I think he's gonna wear down and get too tired.
How possibly could the Rockets win this series? Give me stuff that the Rockets have to do. Probably more than one thing, but something they have to do if they want any chance of winning this series.
I would never wish injury on anyone, but one of the Warriors players needs to get injured.
Oh my God.
No, I'm serious. So
you're giving them no
Kevin
chance.
Durant or Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, like someone needs to get injured. And, a top scorer for the Warriors needs to go out. So that's one less player the Rockets need to guard. Because the Rockets can sit here and put up over 100 points like no one's business. I mean, for a minute, this was looking like an all-star game, the way that they were going up and down the court and shooting threes back and forth. But I just don't think the Rockets defensively can keep up with this team. It's not going to happen. So these games are more likely always going to be over 100 points. But I think in the end, the Warriors are going to be around the 115, 120 mark, and Houston's going to be sticking around 110. That's just how it's going to be.
You were alluding to this a little bit. If I had to say how they win, it would be to play the defense of their lives against the Warriors. Because they can score. No doubt they can score. So they have the offensive part of it. All they need is the defense. So if they want to win this series, they have to play the defense of their lives. And the number one person that has to do that is Mr. James Harden. Possibly the MVP.
Good luck.
We're going to move on. We're going to go to break. Up next, we're going to talk about the NBA draft lottery. We're going to stick with basketball a little bit more. A team got the first overall pick for the first time in their franchise history. We'll discuss that. And we'll also dive in and switch topics completely and dive into Robinson Cano's 80-game suspension, which includes the postseason.
Oh, boy.
So, big-time suspension, big-time deal there in baseball. So we'll be talking lottery and Cano coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast.
After getting swept out of the playoffs by the Cleveland Cavs, Toronto has fired coach Dwane Casey. League sources telling ESPN he coached the Raptors for 7 seasons and led the team to 5 straight playoff appearances in 3 consecutive 50-win seasons.
The third pick in this year's draft goes to the Atlanta Hawks. The second pick will be made by the Sacramento Kings. And that means that the number 1 pick in the 2018 NBA draft goes to the Phoenix Suns.
I'm torn on this because the Suns really have one of the biggest dilemmas at number 1 in recent years. I mean, you've got the hometown kid, DeAndre Ayton, played Arizona, sure makes a lot of sense, looks like, the closest thing to Anthony Davis kind of out there. But Luka Doncic, you have his coach. You just hired him. Are you really going to hire Doncic's coach and not pick Doncic? I think that's the way to go for them.
Cover 2 podcast coming back with our second segment of the show, and we're sticking with the NBA but switching to some draft talk. Last night the NBA had their annual draft lottery, and it's a little different than other major sports like the NFL and Major League Baseball. And the NBA, there's a draft lottery where the worse record you have, the more lottery balls that you get put and into the what's it called, into like the
little like machine over there.
Yeah. It's basically like a little.
I don't know, but I remember when I went to Catholic school, we had a bunch of those all the time. We had these little raffles. It's so random, I know.
Really?
Yeah, we'd have like these little raffles, and we always had one of those gold cages that's
right. Yeah. So they spin it around, and like I said, the worse record that you have, the more likely of a chance that you will get the top seed.
Some teams have more balls than others. Let's just say that.
That's a good way to put it. Apparently, the Phoenix Suns have the most balls.
They have a lot of balls,
team
big balls,
because they were awarded with the number 1 overall pick in this year's upcoming draft. And there's a lot of people who now believe that DeAndre Ayton, the center from Arizona, will get to stay in Phoenix and play for the Suns. That's obviously still speculation, and that's thinking a little ahead. But I just wanted to gauge and let people know that's kind of where the majority of scouts and people in the NBA are thinking. But the Phoenix Suns were the big winners. They did have the most balls in this lottery, and they did get the number 1 overall pick. The Sacramento Kings actually very luckily came up to the number 2 spot. They were originally slotted in the number 7 spot, but because it is a lottery and it's all chance, they bumped up to number 2. So Nick, I want to get your original thoughts on the lottery and the first, let's go with the first 5 picks and what you think.
I'm glad the Suns got number 1 pick because when I look at them, they seem like the worst team in the NBA to me. So they should be getting the number 1 pick. And it is cool. DeAndre Ayton not necessarily staying in Phoenix because he plays in Tucson, but he's staying in the state of Arizona.
Right, okay, yeah.
Which is essentially the same thing. I mean, Tucson's like an hour and a half away. So that is pretty cool for him if the Suns do end up picking him. The Kings, I feel extremely happy for them because it just seems like they haven't had a lot of good luck the last couple of years. So good for them going up there. The Hawks need some help. The Grizzlies, another one of those teams. It's like you look at them and you saw them play, and it's like, yeah, they suck. They're not good. So they need a draft pick. And this one might be the one I'm most interested in. The Mavs moved to number 5. The Dallas Mavericks had a 42% chance of getting into the top 3, and not only don't end up in top 3, they don't even end up top 4 and end up at number 5. Now, Jared, do you remember what Mark Cuban said earlier this season? He alluded to the fact that they were tanking. Maybe this is a little the NBA getting back at them and saying, hey, you guys tanked. We're going to knock you back a couple spots. You're not going to get one of these top players.
Okay, that's
so
a good point.
You never know. But if that did indeed happen, good for the NBA. You really shouldn't be going out there saying you're tanking. But nonetheless, Suns and Kings, though, with its number 1 and 2 picks, it's good for the NBA because those two teams have kind of been bad for a while.
Horrible.
Especially the Kings. They've been bad really ever since Robert Ory made that shot in 2002.
Wow.
To be honest, I mean, they haven't had a lot. They
16 years, huh?
had DeMarcus Cousins, and they screwed that one up. So, good for the Kings, good for the Suns, and good for the NBA on moving the Mavs out. That's my initial thoughts on the top 5 right there.
Yeah, no, mine is more or less along the same lines. It's really about the Phoenix Suns and how pathetic of a team they've had for about a decade. I mean, or really since Steve Nash left, the Suns have not.
I think it was like 2010, maybe it was even later than that. Is when they had Steve Nash and Grant Hill still on the team, and they barely missed out in the playoffs. They really haven't been good since then.
Right.
But the last 2 years, it's been a joke.
It's been horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they've been tanking, but at least they've been doing it quietly, not like Mark Cuban, who just comes out and blurts whatever he wants. So for the Suns, a great day for them. And like I mentioned, DeAndre Ayton is probably going to be the number 1 overall pick. Just talent-wise and athleticism and everything, he seems to be the consensus number 1 guy. But who knows? I'm sure they will do their due process with a lot of these top guys and come to the decision. I believe the draft is in
Brooklyn. I think it's in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Is it in June?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's in June.
It's right after the finals.
Right. Okay, so a couple months away from that, so they'll have time to figure that out. But yeah, I would say the Suns is probably the most impressive and interesting thing that I got out of that. You mentioned the Mavericks in 5, and I didn't really think about Mark Cuban in that instance, but now that I have, the Mavs, they got Dennis Smith Jr. last year, who's a stud, right? Dirk Nowitzki said, I believe he's coming back, but I mean, how great of a player is he still?
And no disrespect meant by this, even though it's very disrespectful, but who cares if he comes back?
They're
not a playoff team. It's like, he should retire. He should realize that he's not, don't do the Kobe thing where you come back and kind of, ruin the team.
Right. ESPN's first mock draft right after the lottery picks went, they have the Mavericks taking Mohamed Bamba, the center from Texas, and he's 7 foot, 207. He's a big boy, and he's a great defender. I've watched a couple of his games, watched a couple of Texas's games on ESPN earlier during the season, and I think he should have stayed and probably come out next year.
He's kind of skinny,
207. And in my opinion, it's for his offensive game. Defensively, I think he's going to do fantastic. I think he can be a rim protector, a rebounder, and a great solid defender. But offensively, I don't think his game is there. And listen, who knows? You go to the right situation and you have the right coaches that can help develop you, and that's one thing. But I think his offensive game is going to sorely be lacking. And I think that's going to hurt him somewhat in his first year. So I think he's going to have some up and downs. But that's just who they have the Dallas Mavericks taking with their first mock draft. So who knows? I'm sure that will change at some point. But let's just go 6 through 10. 6 is the Orlando Magic, and it's interesting that they have them taking Trae Young, the versatile point guard from Oklahoma.
Pick.
Right, very interesting with the season that he had. I mean, the first couple months of the season, and he was the consensus basically MVP, and then he fell off and in the tournament basically did nothing. The Bulls coming in at number 7, another team that was basically tanking throughout the whole season. Cleveland Cavaliers coming in at number 8. They get the pick via the Nets, and this is probably not where the Cavs wanted to be, but they will definitely take it because, like we mentioned in the first segment, and like we mentioned multiple times on the show, there's a strong possibility that Mr. LeBron James will not be suiting up for the Cavaliers next year, so they are definitely going to need some reinforcements there. The Knicks are coming in at number 9, and to round out the top 10, the Sixers take the Lakers pick. So the Lakers, they do have a first-round pick, but it is way down in the end of the first round. So the 76ers get that Lakers pick at number 10.
Yeah. Okay, what annoys me about this 6 through 10 is the Cavs and 76ers in there. If the NBA wants their league to have a lot of parity, they need to stop, and I get that these were based on trades and stuff like that, but they need to stop this stuff where, like, playoff teams are in the top 10. Okay? So that's not the way it should be. Okay? And it seems like the Nets haven't had a pick for, 5 years now? Legitimately, they haven't had a pick. And the 76ers, how many more picks do they need? It's just like, specifically with the NBA, and no other sport this really has a problem. But maybe, and this is drastic, But because of what has happened with the Lakers picked the last couple of years, the way the 76ers have tanked, and teams like the Cat and the Nets just not getting picks, maybe you put a limit on draft picks that you can draft, that you can trade in trades. Or just eliminate trading draft picks altogether unless you're on draft day.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So you're not. I'm not saying you can't trade draft picks, but it just seems like it's an easy tool, and I think for teams for some reason are realizing that first round picks are pretty damn valuable in the NBA, and they're just giving them up for nothing. I remember the Clippers gave up, I think, their first round pick from like last year for Jeff Green.
right.
And it was
but
like, what are we doing?
I've got something to say about that. I think the top, if you're in the top 10 of first round picks, I think that is really the cream of the crop. And my real opinion, when you're getting into the teens and the late 20s, those first round picks, just the percentages going back on years and years, guys haven't really, I don't want to say that they haven't panned out, but you don't really find too many superstars and guys that are going to change your team, with the 18th or the 25th pick in the draft. You really have to be in the top 5, top 10. So, I mean, for the Clippers, when they traded their first round pick, I think they were already in the teens at minimum. It's not like they had a top 5 pick and they would have traded.
They were trying to go to the finals that year.
Right.
But it's like just we're throwing around. It's because the NBA has a lack of draft picks to throw around. There's only 2 rounds, whereas NFL has 7. MLB has like 40. They never trade their picks.
It's a little ridiculous.
And the NHL also has 7 as well. So they kind of trade their picks. But it just seems like more of a problem in the NBA than it is a good thing. And I'm just kind of sick of seeing the Nets not improve. And I'm sick of seeing the Lakers. Lakers have finally lost one of their picks. But still, I mean, if you're not good and you don't make the playoffs, you should get a damn draft pick.
Right.
It's how you help your team. And I don't want to see teams like the Cavs be in the top 10. Okay, I get that LeBron's going to leave, and they're probably going to be a top 10 draft pick next year once he leaves. But still, it just annoys me. And it just, you wonder if they have to do something about draft picks trading, because it seems like it's ruining the game in a way, because these teams that are bad aren't improving. The teams that are really bad, at least. So, maybe, like I said, I'm not eliminating trades overall for draft picks, but I am eliminating them during the regular season because you don't know where the draft pick is. And you're just throwing it away, and they're just being thrown around like they're nothing. And, draft day, let all hell break loose. Let every team trade their pick if they want. Doesn't matter. Then you know the pick, but nonetheless. Let's move on. 11 through 14. Hornets got number 11. And the Clippers get 12-13. Denver at 14. Now, I think Hornets and Denver, the pick is not going to matter as much. I want to talk about the Clippers, because they do get 1 draft pick from the Pistons, who originally we thought were going to make the playoffs. So they actually do get a lottery pick. I think, and you have Jerry West on that staff now making decisions. The Clippers got to trade up.
Really?
Because I think in their situation right now, they maybe need a player instead of a couple of players. They're, late lotto picks. Last couple of years, they've drafted guys in the late first round. It hasn't worked out. Sindarius Thornwell's a great player, but he's not a star. And they've had other guys like Reggie Bullock that they've drafted, and a lot of other guys that aren't even on the team anymore. But, so I think for the Clippers, you trade that pick up into the top 10, obviously. Maybe even top 5. And hey, this is crazy enough. You could do this. Possibly throw DeAndre Jordan in the trade. Maybe trade for the number 1 pick.
I don't think that's crazy at all, because if I'm the Clippers, how long has DeAndre Jordan been on this team? And I get it, he doesn't have Blake Griffin or Chris Paul anymore, but when that trio was together, they still were not able to get past the second round.
No.
So I don't think that's out of the question to trade DeAndre Jordan.
Exactly, but think about this. You throw DeAndre Jordan in the 12th and 13th pick. That's pretty good. For the number 1 pick, get DeAndre 8. There's your new center.
Yeah, if I'm the Suns, I say thank you, but no thank you.
Of course. But this is the only team with 2 picks in the first round.
Right.
Maybe possibly even in the whole first round. And 12 and 13 are both lotto picks. Those are going to be good players that they draft. And this seems like a pretty good draft to me. It seems like there's a lot of solid players in this draft. But you got to get up, I think, at least to 8 with your pick. If you want to trade. Jerry West, I'm not going to disagree with anything he does, because literally everything he's touched has turned into gold. And by gold, I mean NBA championships. Okay, maybe not with the Memphis Grizzlies, but they turned from a joke of a franchise to a team that was a legitimate contender in the NBA. Okay.
So what you're telling me is that the Clippers are really one player away from getting back into playoff contention and or championship contention.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they need, if they want to legitimately start to rebuild, I think they have enough pieces to where they're not going to become the Suns or the Grizzlies or the Kings. They'll be right in that limbo where they were next year, but they won't, because DeAndre Jordan, we know what he is. And he's a potential all-star player that could win Defensive Player of the Year, but is not the number one guy on the team, and that's what he is right now. He's, the Clippers' number one guy. And I would rather have a guy in DeAndre Ayton where you don't know, and he could be even better than DeAndre Jordan, and you have him for 4 or 5 years or whatever the contracts are for the NBA, for sure. And he's, just building, and he's, because that guy looks like an all-time talent to me. DeAndre Ayton, guy's a freak. So, I don't know. Maybe you think about that. Maybe you just keep the 2 picks. You pick 2 more players, and, I still don't think it's totally out of the picture that LeBron James could possibly come to the Clippers. I mean, I know it would be annoying, and it's probably not going to happen. But LeBron going to the Clippers is a better thing than going to the Lakers. Okay, they have a better team. They have great defensive players on that team. They still would probably keep DeAndre Jordan in this case if they got LeBron, and they still have Lou Williams. So that team would be, I feel like, contend more. But like I've been kind of saying, I think he'll stay in the East nonetheless. But I don't think they're out of the free agent market either during the offseason. So Clippers. Clippers. So I think if you trade DeAndre Jordan and you get maybe DeAndre Ayton, you have a lot of solid players like Patrick Beverley and Sam Decker and Lou Williams, and then you have this prospect center, this other prospect player in there as well. And then you sign a free agent, say Paul George, someone like that. Clippers, they're a playoff team again.
Yeah, no, I agree they could be a playoff team, but listen, I mean...
you build for your future, too, but you have your future, too, as well.
You do build, but, like, how many times on paper have we said, oh, this Clippers team is so good, they have all these players, blah, blah, blah. And I think at some point, listen, they traded away a couple of their all-stars. I think you start to have to look at Doc Rivers. I mean, how long has he been with this team now?
They're just talking about extension for him.
How much of a leash are you going to give this guy? Yes, I get it. What he did with the Celtics, winning a championship with them, getting to a second championship in 2010 and losing to the Lakers. I get that. And I'm not saying, he's not a good coach. I think he's a great coach. But, like, how many opportunities are you going to give to one guy before you have to say, listen, you haven't been able to get over this certain hump? And yes, I guess you could say last year was a new year because he didn't have all the stars with him, and you had younger players and guys that you're basically trying to give looks to. But at a certain point, I think you have to say, all right, it's not just the players, it's also the coach and the organization, the ownership. So I think those guys need to take a little more responsibility. And realistically, if the Clippers give Doc Rivers a contract extension, I think that's blasphemy. Because what has he done in his tenure with the Clippers to deserve a contract extension? He hasn't gotten out of the second round of the playoffs.
Yes.
With Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. And now you have lesser talent on your team, and you somehow think that they're going to do better? That doesn't make any sense to me, regardless of whether they do the scenario that you said and trade for DeAndre Ayton. Regardless of if they get him or not, I don't see this Clippers team being competitive. Therefore, I really think they need a change starting up top with Doc Rivers.
Yeah, it's interesting because he kind of earned brownie points last year with a lot of Clippers fans because that was not a very good team and they almost made the playoffs. They had a lot of injuries to a lot of key players, and then they traded Blake Griffin. And that team still was a couple games away from making the playoffs. So I think that's where we saw that Doc Rivers is still a good coach. My question would be, who the hell else would you hire? I think Doc Rivers is...
Mark Jackson,
Jeff
Van Gundy.
I knew you were going to say Mark Jackson, too. Mark Jackson is the hot name right now. And Mark Jackson, I believe, is a good coach. But the one time Doc Rivers played Mark Jackson in the playoffs with that great Warriors team, Doc Rivers won. So, not to bring that up, but I have to somewhat have something against the Warriors, right? We can't. But I'll agree and disagree. I do agree his run with the Clippers has been disappointing. That loss to the Rockets back in 2015 was one of the most infuriating series losses I've experienced as a fan. Okay? They were up 3-1. They were up by 20, 25 points. and they start throwing alley-oops, and they end up losing the next 3 games. Okay? Horrendous. Worse than the Dodgers losing in Game 7 last year. That series. Okay? They go on and they screw up, even though they had a lot of guys injured, against the Portland Trailblazers. Okay? That was disappointing. They never even played the Warriors. The Warriors never even eliminated them from any playoffs. So, I don't know. They have been disappointing, but then there's been good things. They won 50 to possibly 60 games every single year before last year. That's pretty impressive. That's Greg Popovich type stuff. And last year, they almost made the playoffs with essentially nobody. So, I could see them giving him an extension, maybe 2 more years, because I think he's part of the front office as well. And I think Jerry West understands that the guy's kind of a legend in the game, and you want to keep a guy like that around players. I can understand how they could fire him, but I could also understand how they could give him an extension. So I'm not necessarily on your thing where I think he needs to be fired, but I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say that. Now, Jared, I almost forgot. We weren't even talking about this. You're talking about a coach getting fired. Dwane Casey.
Bye-bye.
Fired from the Toronto Raptors. I was right. I said they need to make a change and they need to start with the coach. Right? Dwane Casey's gone. Even though he's a good coach and he's there, I think that made a little more sense than, say, Doc Rivers getting fired from the Clippers. But your thoughts on Dwane Casey, we weren't even going to talk about it. I think we'll talk about Cano in the next segment.
That was, to me, a little shocking. And, I don't know, not shocking, I guess you could say disappointing.
Yeah.
Because of the team that this Raptors organization had, with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry and the Serge Ibaka and the role players that these guys had, and the fact that they were the number 1 seed in the East. I mean, they were better than the Celtics for the majority of the regular season. They were better than the Cavaliers, better than the Sixers. They had a 59-23 record, and you get fired after that season. I mean, that right there, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I think I'm not going to sit here and say it's because they lost to the Cavaliers. I think it's the way that they lost. And I think there really is a difference. It's one thing to have really close competitive games and go 6 or 7 games in a series. I think it's another thing to basically get bounced, get swept, have your all-star starting shooting guard in DeMar DeRozan sit, I believe it was game 3 or game 4, for the entire fourth quarter, and he didn't even get in the game at all because he was playing so horribly. So I think there was different factors that came into play, not just necessarily the fact that they lost the Cavaliers, but it was how they lost, seeing as how much of a good season they had, and what a disappointment it was that they lost like that. So I think, unfortunately, that was the reason why Dwane Casey got the boot. I think he's a really, really good coach, and I think he relates to young players really well, because that's another thing. This Raptors team was really young, and I don't think, not to say that they didn't have any playoff experience, but I don't think they had as much experience as the Cavaliers, and I think that was another reason why they lost. So I think throw Dwane Casey's name in for the Clippers. I think that's another guy who isn't going to be jobless for a long time. I think he's going to have a lot of interest from other teams, and I think he'll, as long as he wants to, I think he's going to get back into the coaching world really, really soon. So that one for me was a little dicey, a little tricky. I think I could have gone both ways. If the Raptors decided to keep him, I could have seen why, because of the good season they had. But because of the way that they lost, it was kind of just like, man, we can't go out like that. We have to at least put up a fight and win a couple games, but we can't get swept and lose like that. So tough loss for the Raptors.
You make good points, and I think everyone kind of knows. I was saying he should get fired anyway, so I'm not going to say too much more on the topic. Last thought on the lottery. You want me to say mine first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Another thing that annoys me about this is I see Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and LA in the lottery. Come on, NBA. Really? This is the biggest cities in the U.S., and they're representing in the lottery. And it would have been the Nets if it weren't for the Cavs. You'd have 2 New York teams, LA team twice, Philly, the Lakers would be in it, and then you have Chicago. That's pretty disappointing that the top markets aren't getting in there. But you look at baseball, and the best teams are, the Cubs. Well, the Dodgers were, but now they suck. Yeah, I'm just saying. Houston, big city. and then of course the New York teams, specifically the Yankees, stepping up. So, NBA, you got to think about that too. Some of your best franchises are in the lottery, not in the playoffs. So that's a little disappointing for me. Your kind of final thought.
Right, my final thought's sticking with our hometown Lakers and the fact that, like we mentioned earlier, they do give their number 10th pick up to the 76ers because of the trade that they made. So really for this team, I think this offseason is going to have to be about free agency because, like I mentioned, with the 25th pick, there is no guarantee and a very, very small chance that you're going to get an impact player at number 25. Not to say that you can't, because like the Lakers did last year with Kyle Kuzma and Josh Hart, I mean, they got some steals later on in the rounds, but I don't think you can bet on that every single year. So whether they do end up getting Paul George or find a way to trade for Kawhi Leonard or, persuade LeBron James to come, I think this offseason is really going to be huge for them as far as free agency goes, because I don't think they can sit here and bet on their draft picks to come in and make as big of a splash impact as they did this past season.
No, true. And we look at all these other off seasons where they've been drafting guys and all this stuff. This might actually be the biggest one out of all of them. Clearly with the free agents, but also the way they have to draft too. They don't have a top pick anymore, so you really do have to maneuver around and figure stuff out. That's it. A lot of NBA. We will move on to Kano in the next segment, which is called Do You Care? So coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast, Do You Care?
Well, from a baseball standpoint, it's a huge loss. Look, he is the face of the franchise. He is the clubhouse leader who brings everybody together. And obviously losing him for 80 games. Look, he already broke a bone in his hand, but now losing him for 80 games, which is half the season, especially with the way the Mariners are playing. They're only a game and a half out of first place. This is an enormous blow, especially since the Mariners don't really have somebody that they can just slip in at second base that's going to give them anywhere near the same leadership or production.
I think it's the fascinating thing about the way that this went. Jerry Richardson didn't come close to the money that they'd wanted to get. They wanted to get in the $2.6 billion range. They didn't get close to there. It's going to be a $2.2 billion sale. What's really interesting about it is the money they left on the table. Ben Navarro, who's from the Carolinas, was the high bidder. A lot of the other owners weren't comfortable with the way he made his money, and they felt more comfortable with David Tepper, like he's one of us.
Michigan State University has agreed to pay $500 million to settle lawsuits brought against it by victims of Larry Nassar. Newsy's partners at WXYZ report $425 million will be paid now to the more than 300 survivors who filed claims.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast. That's after lots and lots of NBA talk. But fear no more. We are at our favorite segment of the day, and that segment is called Do You Care? Our favorite segment of the day. I have to always do the intro like that because it has to be special. It can't just be like a normal intro, Jared. So,
Of course not.
Yeah, of course not. So this is the game where we will ask each other certain questions about sports. Some stories might be obscure. Some others might be just news that we didn't get to talk about during a certain segment. So we want to talk about it right now because we can do whatever the hell we want. So, and then we will say whether we care or not about this. Jared gets the first question. Jared, do you care that the Winnipeg Jets and Vegas Golden Knights are tied 1-1 in their series right now?
I don't care, but it has been a really interesting series. Vegas, obviously the expansion team, and the way that they've played, really not many people expected them to get this far, even make the playoffs. And the fact that they were able to beat the Kings and now be in a really, really good series with the Jets. The Jets have beat the Sharks in the second round, and then in the first round the Sharks have beaten the Ducks. So I think really a lot of people are on the Golden Knights bandwagon right now. But the Jets came out in game one and like you mentioned on break, kind of punched Vegas in the mouth a little bit and said, hey, listen, just because you guys are the hot team right now, you're the expansion team, everyone's kind of picking you right now to win, we have home ice. and they came out in Game 1 and dominated. Game 2, the Golden Knights did get some revenge, winning 4-2. But I think this is really going to be a back-and-forth series. The game switches now, going back to Vegas for Games 3 and 4.
Loudest building in the NHL.
Right. So I don't know. Like I said, my money's still on the Golden Knights, and I'm rooting for them because of their an expansion team and because no one expected them to do so well. So I think the Jets are going to give them a real good fight. I think this is going to go 6, but I think Vegas will take it in the end. Nick, do you care that Michigan State is going to pay $500 million to the victims of Larry Nassar's abuse?
Whew, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, but it makes sense because of where it's going to. Obviously, this Larry Nassar scandal has been horrible. Some of the stories that have come out of it have been gruesome. They've been, hard to listen to. A lot of them involving some of the biggest athletes we have here on our USA teams, and specifically the USA gymnastics teams that everyone gets behind every 4 years. So there's a little personal kind of thing in there with a lot of the fans. But, man, this just... Michigan State and the U.S. Olympic Committee, it just hasn't looked good for them. And having to settle $500 million worth of money, just Michigan State, too. It's not even the U.S. gymnastics program. But like you mentioned to me, 332 different people are getting a piece of this money. So now you kind of understand why it's $500 million. But, man, God, academia has a lot of money, doesn't it?
Yeah, they do.
$500 million just to be able to shell out for a settlement. It's not like they were forced to pay this. It's a settlement. So, unfortunately, these people had to endure what they had to endure because of this creep and just overall bad guy, Larry Nassar. But they are going to, there is a positive out of this, and they are going to get some money because of this. So, good for them in that case. And I see, just based on the fact that this is $500 million and there's 332 people, some people are going to get paid quite a bit because of this. So good for them. Anytime you can kind of take a shot at the man and take a shot at upper management in a way, that's nice. And that's what Michigan State's going to have to do because they let this guy around the campus all the time. Jared, do you care that Brandon Mann finally got called up?
I do, and this story is really, really cool. Brandon Mann, for most people who don't know, and I didn't even know, I had to do a little bit of research on him, has spent 16 years in the minor leagues and overseas in Japan. I believe he got drafted in 2002. So, and he has never, ever made an appearance on a major league squad up until this past week when he was called up by the Texas Rangers. So, I think this is really just about perseverance and the fact that, hey, he loves the game and, he was willing to wait as long as it took for him to get his opportunity. So I don't know what age he was when he did get drafted, but 16 years, I'm sure that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. I'm sure that's a lot of doubting, hey, am I ever going to make it? But the fact that he was able to do that, I think is really, really cool. Hopefully he can, do well and stay up in the majors with his team and he doesn't get, demoted or sent back down. Because that's, like I said, that's just, I think the word that comes to mind is perseverance. And I think it's really, really cool to see, even though it is kind of a rival. I'm an Angels fan. Really, really cool. So hopefully he can play well, and for the rest of the season, there's a long way to go. Hopefully he can stay up with the Major League squad.
I believe not only was he drafted in 2002, but he was drafted in like the 27th round.
Oh my gosh.
Too. So it's like this guy really has had to endure, but you love it, you keep playing.
Right,
So,
you do. So
makes sense.
Yeah, it was really, really great. Nick, do you care that the Washington Capitals and the Tampa Bay Lightning are in a series right now? The Capitals are up 2-1.
Yes, I do. I do care. The Capitals, the team I have decided to back for the rest of these playoffs since the Ducks and Kings were eliminated, are up 2-1. So I'm excited that they are up 2-1. They've shown that they really want to get to this Stanley Cup final. Not like teams in when they get to the conference finals don't want to get there, but it just seems like the Capitals. Even when they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, it looks like a different kind of team. And this, like I said, it looks like a Stanley Cup team. Although the Tampa Bay Lightning have been arguably the best team in the NHL the entire season, I still believe the Capitals will win the series, and it's a good start for them going up 2-1. Although the Lightning did take care of business last night. 4-1, I believe, was the score in Washington. So far, no team has won on the road. I think, overall, I think the last 9 games, the last 9 games in the NHL, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the road team is 8-1. So,
wow.
I don't know what it is, but I think that one win was Winnipeg at home against the Vegas Golden Knights that you just mentioned. So, other than that, every other road team's won, and now that's what we've seen in this series too. So it doesn't seem like there's a major advantage toward any of the other teams, but I do expect the Capitals to eventually win this series. I want them to win this series. I want Ovechkin to get to the Stanley Cup. And so I'm excited, and that is why I care about that, because they're up 2-1, and I believe the next game is on Thursday. So I believe Vegas and Winnipeg play tonight. So if you're a fan, watch it. It's the loudest building in the NHL. It'll be fun to watch. Jared, do you care that the Carolina Panthers have a new owner, and his name is David Tepper?
I do care. This is great for David Tepper. He was a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, I believe, since 2009. He's made a lot of money in hedge funds. He's obviously a billionaire. He is reportedly buying this Panthers organization for $2.2 billion with a B. That will easily be the largest sale in NFL history of a franchise, taking over for Jerry Richardson, who obviously has been in news headlines for all the wrong reasons as far as sexual misconduct and all of that, which is basically the main reason why he is choosing to sell the team. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Richardson has been an owner of the Panthers for over 25 years.
Well, how long have the Panthers even been? He might be the owner
since
the entire time.
I believe since '93.
He
so
might have
he's probably
been
the one and only majority owner. So obviously tough for him. But listen, when these allegations come up, and if they are true, which it seems like they are, then it is definitely time for you to go. So Tepper is coming in, and he obviously has a lot of background with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think the most noticeable thing or difference between these two owners will be the fact that Tepper is he will be a little more in the spotlight as far as willing to conduct interviews with reporters and the media, to whereas Richardson hasn't had an interview with the media willing in over 5 years. So he's definitely a guy that likes to sit back and basically let everyone else be in the spotlight and deal with all the media talk, which isn't a bad thing. But I think Tepper is just going to be a little more hands-on, and I say that in the most respectful way. Obviously, Jerry Richardson and some of his staff were hands-on in a different way. But I mean in the fact as far as the NFL actual football goes, I think he's going to be more involved with the players and the coaches and all that. So good for the Panthers. I know that they wanted this process to be expedited and not to take long. And it is to be believed that the 3/4 vote needed from all the other owners will pass. I believe there's a meeting in Atlanta, the NFL owners meetings this week in Atlanta, that's supposed to pass. So good for you, Mr. David Tepper. Nick, you get the last question of the day. And it's an interesting one. We're going back to baseball, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you care that Robinson Cano has just been suspended 80 games for steroids?
Robinson Cano. Yes, I do care about this. I have to care about this. Cano. What the hell are you doing, man? Come on. Really? Now, he didn't test positive for an actual PED, but, that's a big but, the drug that he did test positive for is a common, what they call cover-up drug, because you used PEDs. So, Cano, he got caught red-handed, okay? Now, this is why this is disappointing, because I thought, steroids were out of the game, and especially with the good players. And although I'm an Angels fan, and I don't necessarily want to see the teams in their division do well, the Seattle Mariners, I believe, if I'm not wrong, have the longest playoff drought in the MLB. So if there is a team that you kind of want to make it, it's the Seattle Mariners. Robinson Cano, you aren't just screwing yourself out of $12 million this year because you don't get paid, You get suspended. Great. By the way, real quick, MLB has the best suspensions in all of sports. It does really affect guys, and there's no pay, and it just, they literally also constitute with this suspension he doesn't get to play in the playoffs. So he'll come back, and then he won't play in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. So this is why I'm talking about this with the playoffs for Seattle. You're screwing over this entire organization, okay? He made some, BS excuse about a doctor in the Dominican Republic giving him some drug. First of all, why are you getting drugs in the Dominican Republic?
Right.
Okay? I don't mean to throw shade at the Dominican Republic, but their doctors probably aren't better than the doctors here in the U.S., especially maybe your team doctor that's paid lots of money to be your team doctor. So I don't know what you're doing, Cano, but you're really screwing over that fan base in Seattle that hasn't made the playoffs for a while now that they're not going to have their best player on the field. You're screwing over the team, obviously, and you're screwing over yourself and your family at $12 million. So I don't know what his thought process was, but even though he didn't necessarily get caught with actual PEDs like all the guys back in the day, the drug that he did test positive for is very common in PED use, and the MLB, in fact, doesn't even have to suspend guys for the use of this drug, but it's commonly known that they don't want to necessarily call out the dude, so they suspend him for something else. And so this is the MLB knowing that he did steroids and suspending him, because this drug is not a suspendable offense in most cases, but in this case it is because they know he's covering up PED use. So shame on you, like I said on Twitter, Cano. Because you hurt, and he's a great player. He's a fun player to watch. One of the best hitters in the game. Always is around there as far as top average, and always looking for that batting title. But he won't win it this year. The one good thing that's going to come out of this is that D. Gordon might move back to second base. He's been playing center field, so it's going to be a slow process. But D. Gordon will get to kind of play his prominent position now because he's looked kind of terrible in center field this year for Seattle. So one good thing, but nonetheless, Cano. Shame on you for bringing back steroids into the game that didn't need to happen. All right, that's it for Do You Care? On the other side of this break, we're going to get into a good topic, Jared. Sports betting is legal. So me and Jared can get back and do betting on sports. Not that we already weren't, but we can really get into it and we can really get addicted again.
Oh boy.
So we're going to be talking about gambling addictions. We're going to be talking about Pete Rose. Should the MLB do something about him since it's legal now? And we're going to also talk about our favorite kinds of bets and what we like to bet on. So all that coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast.
Sports gamblers rejoice. After many years of back and forth, sports gambling is now potentially legal nationwide. The Supreme Court announced the news that each state will be permitted to allow betting on sports if the local lawmakers are in favor. The Supreme Court justices voted 7-2 to overturn the 25-year-old law. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has long pushed for gambling to be legal, but the NCAA and 4 major pro leagues had successfully blocked Christie and New Jersey in the lower courts.
The states that you mentioned, plus New Jersey, they're all going to be very aggressive in getting ready. New Jersey, certainly, I've seen some reports from there where they're saying they want to be ready to take bets within a month. New York, some state senators have indicated they want to be ready to take bets by the football season. I mean, this is what all these states who have been trying to enact sports laws or who have enacted sports laws in the past couple of years, getting ready for this moment, they want to be ready for football.
Back on the Cover 2 podcast for our last segment of the show, and like Nick mentioned before, very, very excited to mention this.
Super excited.
That's right. Sports betting and gambling is now legal in all 50 states, not just in Nevada. A huge, huge win for basically any and every casino that is out there already.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure there will be more that are going to be built. And a huge win for all of you gamblers and bettors out there who love to bet on sports games regardless of the sport or the circumstance. So, Nick, I just want to get your quick initial thoughts on this. And are you a betting man? Do you typically bet when you go to Vegas? Is that your thing?
Oh yeah, because I can't win in blackjack for my life depending on it. Yeah, no, I've actually turned into more of a sports bettor than a bettor on anything. Like I don't play a lot of like table games. I don't play online poker or anything like that. I'm more of a sports bettor if I'm gonna bet. Usually I gotta have a good sum of money on me if I'm gonna throw money down to actually bet on sports, because it still is kind of a crapshoot a lot of times, and the way they make the bets, especially with like the NFL and stuff, it is tough, and it's not as easy as people probably think. Is like, oh, I think the Patriots are going to win. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to think the Patriots are going to win by 10. You can't. So it's not as easy as people think. But yeah, I do throw my fair share of bets when I go to Vegas. That is the thing I do. Maybe that, and maybe hit up a club or whatever. But yeah, no, I do enjoy the sports bet when I am down to do it. I dive right into it. I've won and I've lost. I haven't really had a big loss or a big win, but so that's why I think I keep doing it. I think that one time I had that big loss. I'm like, yeah, Jared, I don't really care about sports betting.
I'm done
being legal anymore, so you can bet for me if you want. But I think it's exciting. It is going to make a lot more money, I think, for states, obviously, too. I think that's probably why they put this law down. Casinos are going to make a lot of money. People do have a better chance of making money. And sites like DraftKings, right, and FanDuel, now a little less is on them now because they were a little sketchy and there was potentially some sanctions that were going to come down on them. That's not happening anymore, though. The DraftKings specifically, I bet they sent me an email or whatever saying, hey, this law came, we're like good now. So, unless if you like those ones, I think it's more of a good thing than a bad thing. I think if you're addicted, obviously you need to fix the problem, but nonetheless, people that are casual bettors, you don't have to worry about your state, kind of controlling the whole thing now.
Yeah, I'm going to classify myself as a very, very casual bettor. Basically, only when I go to Vegas. I've done DraftKings and FanDuel a couple times, and I've downloaded the app.
Well, technically, fantasy football, when you throw money on it, is betting.
Right,
so,
very true, very true.
So,
but
we've done more than we think.
True, I would not say I sit here and gamble every week. I mean, I maybe do it like once in every football season.
Yeah.
So I rarely do it. And I guess I have to give myself a little bit of credit. I have a limit as to what I will spend, and if I lose it, lose it, and I'm good. I don't need to rush back to the ATM or go in my wallet and pull out more money. So I think that's where I kind of draw the line as far as betting goes, because I know I've got some friends who are like, oh, you lose, we'll just double your next bet and then win. And if you don't do that, then double it again, right? So that's how you kind of get yourself into trouble. But no, I think overall for fans, this is probably the biggest win. And like you mentioned, for states as well, more revenue, more money's going to be coming in for these casinos. And for sports, teams and franchises, I think it only makes things a little more difficult because now you have, and even for, like you mentioned when we were off air, college sports. So now we can bet on college sports, and yet college athletes aren't able to get paid. There's so many different gray areas that are going to be brought up now for professional athletes who maybe they have a friend or they have a certain interest in a certain betting event. Is that going to potentially affect their play? I'm not saying it is, and I'm not trying to sit here and really speculate that, but it's a possibility. I mean, it happened with Pete Rose, right? And obviously that was a long time ago, and that was a whole different area and different circumstances. But I mean, listen, if someone is enticed enough to make a certain, wager or a certain bet on something, knowing that they are in full control of the outcome, or at least partly in control of the outcome, who says that they won't jump at that opportunity? So I think there's just a lot of different things that are going to come of this. But the greatest part is for fans, now you can gamble legally, and you don't necessarily have to go to Vegas or go to DraftKings or FanDuel. Who knows? Maybe like for us in California, we have Pechanga, we have Morongo. If they put a sports book in one of those casinos, you can drive there instead of having to drive to Vegas. So a lot of different scenarios coming out of this.
Yeah, it is the ones you're mentioning are the Indian casinos here in Southern California.
Yes.
Those are the biggest ones, so you could possibly see, obviously, a one like that creating a sports book, which would be exciting for us, so that we don't necessarily have to go out to Vegas to have. Now, obviously, Vegas is a great time, but you wouldn't necessarily always have to go out to Vegas when you wanted to make a lot of sports bets. And now, this is not, by the way, when this law coming out, I think you maybe can help me out on this if I say anything wrong. This is not saying that all of a sudden now, in every single state, sports betting is legal. I think what it's saying now is that the federal law that was saying that sports betting was illegal is now done, and it's just the state's opinions on what to do it. And I think most states will do it because it will make them a lot more money, a lot like why some states are doing the marijuana now. It's a lot like the same thing. So we're not necessarily going to see like California right away get into sports betting. Like tonight, I cannot go throw bets at a bar or whatever on sports betting. It's just not legal yet here fully. But it eventually will, and most people are saying as a result of this that betting will become legal in pretty much every U.S. state.
Right. Yeah. Basically, every state now gets more of a choice as far as if they would like to pursue with this betting and more control over the rules and regulations. And I think that's the thing that every state wanted was an opportunity to create their own rules for this. If we want to, if we're a state, if we're California, and we choose to go ahead and pursue this, we get to make the rules on the gambling rights and all that type of thing too. Whereas, Vegas for years and years has obviously had their own rules and regulations. And speaking of Vegas, I think they're about to take a major hit.
Oh.
I think they're going to take. I think they're going to take a big hit because think about it. Like you just mentioned, we're in California. Obviously, we're a 3.5-4 hour drive. But if you're in New York or something and you want to go really gamble, you got to go to Vegas, right? Yeah. So now you can stay in your hometown. You don't have to fly to Vegas.
Well, New York might not necessarily be the best example because they have Atlantic City.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
so
let's go Miami, for example.
All right.
Like, you throw them in there. I get what you're saying, though.
Right.
Don't mean to cut you
so
off there.
Really, I'm saying I think Vegas will take a monetary hit as far as the amount of people that are now flying in to stay at their hotels and gamble. I don't think Vegas is going anywhere. For me, I still will enjoy going to Vegas and all of the activities and festivities you can do there. But like I mentioned, if we can go drive 45 minutes to an hour down south to Pechanga as opposed to driving 3 or 4 hours to Vegas, if you only have a day or maybe half a day or whatever, I'm going to Pechanga, right? Yeah, you can still drink there. You get to gamble. It's the best of both worlds. Yeah, right. That's true.
Yeah, you just don't have a big strip. You have Temecula, but nonetheless.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, a little less. But you're right.
Ruining my argument.
You're right in some cases that Vegas will take a hit. You know how they can make more of that money back? But maybe taking away some of these ridiculous hotel and parking fees.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I can get on that for days though. No, and you bring up the rules and regulations that some states could do too. I know, like California, they allow obviously some casinos, and there are casinos that aren't Indian-run, Native American-run casinos, like the Commerce Casino in LA and stuff like that. And those, they don't have, like, because they're able to do their own rules and regulations, they don't have blackjack, but they have a game called like 21-something. It's essentially the same thing with like a couple rule changes. It actually is easier than most blackjacks you'll see. But so nonetheless, you'll probably see this in sports betting too. Maybe you won't be able to throw parlays down in some states or something like that. Maybe you won't be able to throw a single bet. It just there'll be a lot of interesting things that happen. Hopefully, the state that I live in isn't weird about it and just kind of makes it like the normal sports betting we've always seen. But it's very interesting that this has happened, and I think it's a good thing overall. Though I think when everybody has a chance to make a lot of money, that's always a good thing. So now let's move on. You mentioned the man that's so notorious with betting in sports, Pete Rose. What is there even a conversation to have right now to say that he maybe needs to be kind of exonerated for what he did, since the rest of the U.S. has realized? I get what he did at the time was he knew what he was doing was wrong, but should there be some slack cut on him now that it seems like everybody would look kind of hypocritical if we're saying, oh, well, Pete Rose, you're still in trouble, but everybody else go out and bet. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I don't know. That one's tough because at the time when he did do all those things, those rules and regulations were in place. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you can go with it. I who knows? Will baseball now maybe accept him a little more? I'm not saying he's going to sit here and get into the Hall of Fame, but will he be able to probably show his face around Major League Baseball a little more and be more accepted? I think so. But still, I think he left such a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths with what he did. I don't think there's going to be really a major difference as far as him getting into the Hall of Fame or anything like that. So yeah, I maybe a little difference, but not enough to be significant in my eyes.
Okay. Yeah. No. I hate to bring this up again, but it is a lot like where you talk about the marijuana now that's legal in California, and how you say that, oh, well, shouldn't all the dudes that, were selling marijuana or whatever, or got caught with marijuana possession, shouldn't they kind of be released from prison since the state is now allowing it? Well, so far they're not. So there is the case to say that, oh, why should Pete Rose? I think you make a good. Well, he already is kind of showing his face a little more too in baseball. I mean, he's on the Fox broadcast, or at least he was before last year. And the Cincinnati Reds did kind of put on a ceremony for him when they had the All-Star game there and stuff like that. But Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, has stood tall in saying that Pete Rose is not going to be in the Hall of Fame, or he's still kind of barred from baseball in a way. So I think it will be hard, but I think it helps his case for sure. It's not a bad thing for him that sports betting is now legal. I think you'll probably see him surface and might maybe say some stuff. He's never been a soft-spoken dude. So, we'll see him say some stuff, but I kind of have to agree with you. Although I still think he should be in the Hall of Fame anyways.
Really?
Well, it's funny. I mean, the thing is called the Hall of Fame. The guy's famous. The guy leads the league in hits. I don't see where the betting came into play. Him getting 4,000 something hits. I get that he bet. He might have bet. He say he never bet against his team. It's his word against ours. But I still think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I still think a guy like Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame as well. So I'm in that, I think, minority that says, hey, whatever you do, whatever you gotta do. You gotta put a shrine around him saying this guy's bet on sports. That's fine, but I still think he should be in the Hall of Fame. His plaque should be in Cooperstown. Same with a lot of these home run guys. The guy that leads the league in home runs probably should be in. The guy that leads the league in hits should be in. I don't care if he cheated a little bit.
Well,
now the cheating.
Okay,
hold on.
All right.
The cheating with Pete Rose is a lot less than the cheating with Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds physically changed his figure to hit those home runs. Pete Rose, I don't think his betting made him get more hits. It takes a lot of skill to get 4,000 hits. That's why nobody's even been close to doing it.
I understand what you're saying, and I lean more towards your argument with Pete Rose. I can't agree at all with the whole Barry Bonds thing. I mean, literally, I'm not saying that Barry Bonds would not have hit a good amount of home runs if he would not have taken steroids and gotten as big as he did, but he literally cheated, because I'm telling you right now,
it was a bad example.
He would not have the 50
and
60 home run years and have as many home runs as he did in his career without the use of steroids. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just almost impossible. Yeah. So no, I can't agree with that one at all. That is why he is in the leaderboard in that position. He would not be if it wasn't for the use of steroids. So he could have probably still been a great player, and who knows, a number 3 or number 4 hitter or anything like that. But no, if you physically cheat and you're Robinson Cano and you more than likely used PEDs or steroids, or you're Mark McGwire or any of these other guys, it doesn't matter the sport. If you physically cheat to enhance your body in a way that you cannot do by yourself, other than literally just working out or anything like that, then yes, that is called cheating, and you should be, I don't know if you want to say banned from the sport, but in Barry Bonds' case, I think they are completely right in not letting him in the Hall of Fame. Now, I would...
Well, it is writers, though. It's not like there's a Hall of Fame committee that's picking him. It's writers. It is, potentially, if we became writers or we became big figures, we would actually have the vote to possibly pick Barry Bonds.
Right, and he would never get my vote.
But no. And he would get my vote only because I believe that everyone that has made a mark on baseball, whether negative or positive, should at least be in the Hall of Fame if you have the stats to do it, and especially if you were the all-time home run leader. There should be something in the MLB Hall of Fame that says Barry Bonds. You know, he's something.
There is something. It says he's the leader in home runs. It's just not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know. It's debatable. I do think that the comparison between Pete Rose and Barry Bonds was a wrong one. I take it back completely. Pete Rose did not physically enhance. He might have bet against his team, but again, he has the most hits ever. How many times did he really bet against his team? And if he did it once, who really cares? You know, I mean, the Reds were winning World Series anyways. It's not like Robinson Cano or some, and I hate to throw his name in this kind of thing, but it's not like Robinson Cano had been betting against the Mariners and they're never making the playoffs. And you could go back and be like, well, they might not have made the playoffs because this guy was betting on them losing and he was, not playing well. But Pete Rose, he was a star. They had one of the best teams of all time, and he has the most hits ever. I don't think his betting on sports really affected the game that much. And I get that they wanted to make a statement and all that stuff with him, but I think now this will help him. I already did think that he should be in the Hall of Fame, so now that this is, it makes more argument for someone like me, makes more argument for someone like him. But nonetheless, it's a reason we talk about it on the podcast because we can agree to disagree. So now to end the podcast, I think I kind of want to talk about us. What are your favorite kind of bets? Like, what's the sport that you feel the most comfortable betting on? If you had to throw down a bet right now and a sport, which one would be the most comfortable, you feel like?
I mean, for me, it's very easy. It would be football because I feel that's what I'm most knowledgeable in.
Uh-huh.
So whether it's, the Super Bowl and all the random prop bets and all that stuff, that's very, the percentages of winning those are very, very small. But, whether you're betting on the line, on the point spread, or you're betting on, Drew Brees passing for over 400 yards or something like that, I would feel more comfortable doing that than betting, especially in baseball. Basketball is kind of hit or miss. I mean, I don't know, you can be Kevin Durant and have an off night and only score 8 points, or you can go off for 40. Not to say that in any other sport it's different because everyone can have an off day. But no, I think because I'm most knowledgeable in football, that would give me the confidence to go out and basically put money on the line. So as far as actual individual bets, I don't bet enough to know all the different types of bets. I mean, I can sit here and guess and probably come up with a lot of them off the top of my head. But as far as, the specific individual bets, I don't really know. So like I said, for me, it'd be more spreads and points, take the under or take the over, that type of thing, as opposed to all the million different individual bets that you can put your money on.
Uh-huh.
What about you?
Well, for me, football's definitely up there. I think the easiest ones to do, though, are boxing and UFC. Because it's just one guy, and there's normally, if there's going to be an upset or not. So when I talk about how easy it'd be, I count it as, not betting on a dude because you know that he's probably going to win. So I think the decision-making on, let's say, boxing and UFC seems to be a little easier than football because a lot of those guys don't have off nights. Let's say Floyd Mayweather literally has never had an off night. Conor McGregor has rarely had an off night. And his off night was against a fantastic competitor in Nate Diaz. So I think those are kind of the easiest ones. And I think that's why what's funny is they're centered in Vegas as well. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why they are, because they're a little easier to do. But football's fun as well. I think obviously spreads are a lot harder where you have to figure out the points during a game because there are a lot of games that people will be like, oh, it's going to be a shootout, and it ends up being 17-14.
Right.
Whereas I think if you're betting, let's say Patriots -9, that's a little easier because you could see the Patriots killing somebody or something like that. Or you could be like, oh, well, I think they're actually gonna barely win or maybe even lose, so I'm gonna bet against them. So I think those are a little easier, but I think the easiest ones are boxing and UFC.
What I thought of, and you just mentioned how a lot of major boxing events are held in Vegas.
Yeah.
I think now that's going to change as well.
Oh, really?
Because if a casino, and I'm not saying Pachanga, I'm just literally throwing their name out because that's the first thing that came to my head. But if they, if they get a sports book and they all of a sudden, make a boxing arena, I mean, who's to say that they couldn't get an attraction, a major boxing attraction, kind of take some of that spotlight away from Vegas. So, I mean, I don't mean to sit here and kind of harp on Vegas, but I think this entire ruling is gonna come up in a negative light for Vegas. I think it's gonna take a lot of revenue away. It's gonna take a lot of opportunity away from them. Like I said, Vegas isn't going anywhere, but I think boxing events and other events that are typically held in Vegas, at least the major ones, will now be spread out to other states, and I think there's going to be more opportunities for other states to get involved.
Well, yeah, and it's already somewhat happening too, because you have a lot of events, like the last Triple G fight was in Carson, right down the street. I mean, you were just in Carson this last weekend.
Right.
So there's a lot that are happening in California already. Triple G and Canelo, the fight that was supposed to happen on May 5th didn't, because Canelo apparently ate some bad meat. That fight, there was a debate on whether to put it in the T-Mobile Arena, which is the main arena. It's where the Vegas Golden Knights play and stuff like that in Vegas, or put it at Madison Square Garden in New York. Because New York has finally kind of been a little more lenient on their laws as far as fighting. And I think that will always come into it. Although sports betting is big, a lot of these athletic commissions are they make it difficult on people to have fights. Like the city of New Orleans doesn't like there to be blood in their sports.
Really?
So that's why UFC never goes to New Orleans, because you're almost guaranteed someone's going to bleed at least once during those things. So New York has always been difficult. New York, for example, we had that crazy stuff where the UFC had to change fights, the main event of the fight, back in April a couple times, and it was a lot of that was due to the fact that the New York State Athletic Commission was weird about their rules. It was a lot different than, let's say, Vegas and California and Texas and all that as well, other ones. But I get your point, though. I could see this sports betting causing people to maybe not want to come out to Vegas, and attendance is being lower, and they'd be like, hey, bring it to our, bring boxing to our city, instead of us having to go to Vegas and get boxing there. So no, they're all good points. Final thought on the day?
My final thought's actually about ESPN, and more or less about, and I'm sure you've heard ESPN Plus.
Yes.
It's the new channel, I guess you could say, that ESPN is putting on. I know Kobe's, his new show is on there as well. And it's basically another channel that you can go and get, sports, ESPN sports, on documentaries and other types of kind of in-depth videos. And it's cool in a sense, but then guess what? It's also another paid service that you have to pay for. So on top of paying your monthly subscription for ESPN, you now have to pay, I think it's like $5 a month, so it's not a lot.
Well, and along with your cable too.
Right,
like you're paying
right.
For
so I first when I saw ESPN Plus, I didn't know you had to pay for it. I'm like, oh, no way. Like I was going to watch Kobe's new show. Yeah. I was going to watch all these other shows, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, you get like, the week free 7-day trial, and then you have to pay $5 a month. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I get it that these companies and major corporations are always out to make more money. But I mean, just like I feel like the 30 for 30 documentaries that they always do. I mean, are those eventually going to go on this ESPN Plus? Because I love watching those, but I just feel that eventually they're going to pull a lot of things that were free and now put them on this ESPN Plus, which, in a sense, if you now want to watch those sports or those specific documentaries, you don't have to pay for it. So, not really happy about that. Like I said, it's $5. It's not a big thing, but it's one other thing that you have to pay for if you want to get these extra services. Exactly. So before, ESPN was, you can go on their website, or if you had the app or whatever, and you could watch anything you wanted. And now you have to pay a subscription, and now you have to pay an extra subscription. So just more, I get it, and more for ESPN to make another buck.
Makes sense. Mine's quick. You mentioned 30 for 30. I heard that they're going to come out with a 10-hour Michael Jordan documentary.
10 hours?
Which I'm super excited about. I'm guessing it's 5 different episodes worth 2 hours.
I would hope so. And he was supposedly okay with this, and was a part of this.
He's going to do interviews too.
Right.
So that's really cool. I'm excited about that. Not much more I want to talk about. Just wanted to mention, since you mentioned 30 for 30, that the documentary is going to come out soon.
Do you know when?
No, I don't. It's probably later this year. As you hear, the music podcast is coming to an end. But I can imagine it being a documentary. It'll be somewhat easy to get together and stuff like that. So I would guess late 2018, early 2019, but you might be able to look it up and find out right now, right away. So what it is. But nonetheless, it's been Cover 2 Podcast. I'm Nick Nina.
I'm Jared Smith.
And this is, of course, been the Cover 2